stretched. I'm so excited. I historically do not have good results with quick mozzarella, but I got it to work this time, and I did a little something that Google says you are not supposed to do. So stick around till the end of the video and I will tell you what it was that I did. I just got a gallon of frozen skim milk out of the freezer, so I'm going to thaw that and do a quick citric acid mozzarella. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it. I love it because it is a simple and very versatile cheese. I mean, we use it in so many dishes. We use it constantly. On the other hand, it's very fickle. It can be very finicky and just tricky to make. Now, I have found that if I stick with a traditional mozzarella recipe, I usually have no problems. However, on days like today, it's already 1:30 in the afternoon. We're going to be having supper in just a few hours. I don't have time to wait for milk to naturally acidify. So I'm going to give citric acid mozzarella a try today, and we'll see how it goes using frozen skim cow's milk. So let's get into it. While I'm in here slaving away, the kids and the hubby are out on the sled. Okay, first things first, I set out all the equipment and ingredients that I need to make my cheese. And now it's time to sanitize my equipment. So first thing, get rid of nasty old towels. Get a fresh one. There we go. No dirty towels when you're making cheese. All right, next up, I'm gonna put a couple inches of water in my pot, put my equipment in it, and let that boil for 10 minutes. Okay, so it's just about been 10 minutes. The timer's gonna go off. Let's get this stuff pulled out of here with my handy dandy tongs, let it dry, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay. Do that very carefully. Before I start to heat my milk, we need to dilute some citric acid in some water and add it to the milk. It's very important to do this before you heat it up. Otherwise, you'll curdle it and make ricotta. Also good, just not what I need tonight. Oh yes, and it is simpler to do this if your milk is already thawed, but you know. Okay, so I got my 1/4 cup of water. Now I'm going to go ahead and do 1.5 teaspoons of citric acid. So here is the tricky part with quick mozzarella, is you're just guessing how much acid you need to add in, and that's why I kind of have a love-hate relationship with this. I like that it's fast, but I hate the guessing part. That's why I like traditional mozzarella, but we're gonna go ahead and give it a try today. Now, my recipe says to use between 1 teaspoon to 1.5 teaspoons of citric acid. That if you're using, the fresher your milk is, the less acid you need. Now, I'm using frozen milk. Typically, I try to freeze the freshest milk possible, but I don't know that for sure because I don't remember. This was frozen back in July. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use 1.5 teaspoons and we'll see how it goes. All right, let's go ahead and stir this into our milk. As well as we can with a big frozen icicle in the middle of it. So I stirred that in the best as I could for about 30 seconds. I'm going to go ahead and pop this thermometer in here. We're gonna heat this to 90 degrees. I just have it on medium heat. I'll come back and stir it every so often. I also prefer naturally acidified or traditional mozzarella versus these quick types because I just think they have a much better flavor. I usually culture mine with clabber and maybe a little bit of yogurt, or usually just clabber, whatever I have on hand. Anyway, I love that smell, aroma, that flavor that the lactic acid bacteria, the clabber, gives it versus an added acid. You know, then it just kind of tastes like lemon juice or vinegar or something, but it works in a pinch. So let's hope it works. Our temp's up to 90. I went ahead and turned the heat off. I'm gonna put a 1/4 cup of water in here to dilute my rennet, and I will add that to the milk. Do I always do this? No, I surely, whoops, that's the wrong one. Okay, I do not. Sometimes I just add my rennet directly into the milk while I'm stirring. And you know what? It's just fine. Don't tell anyone. I'm a bad cheese making influence, I suppose. All right, here we go. All right, now I'm gonna stir it with the up and down motion. Now I'm going to try to slow and stop the movement of the milk so I don't have cracks in the curd from it still being in motion after I added the rennet. It doesn't have to be perfect, just slowly move your spoon through it to slow it. All right, I'm gonna call that good. All right, I'm gonna cover this up and I'm gonna let it sit for 30 minutes to an hour, and then I'm gonna check it for a clean break. 30 minutes has passed. I am checking for a clean break. You can see it split open pretty evenly there. Sorry, I'm trying to get you a better view because the camera is creating a shadow in the milk. I'm just gonna try it again here. So it's a little bit soft. I probably could have let it sit a little longer, but the whey is clear and not milky. I know it's hard to see, but I just decided that that was good enough because I needed to get on with supper preparations, and I go ahead and move on to the next step, which is cutting my curd. So I am cutting my curd into 1-inch cubes, and I let it sit for about 5 minutes, let it rest for about 5 minutes between each series of cuts. Now cutting to this size is going to give you, I don't know, like a medium moisture mozzarella, or maybe even a little on the drier side. That kind of depends on how much you stir. Anyway, if you would like a really moist mozzarella, you don't even have to cut it at all. You can just leave it one solid curd mass, or if you want it drier, you can cut it into even smaller curds or use a whisk. Okay, I've got all of my curds cut up and I'm beginning to stir now. So you can see here I'm just trying to really gently bring up the curds from the bottom so that I can cut the really big guys and try to get them uniform or fairly uniform in size. So I decided to stir mine for about 40 minutes. You don't have to do this. Again, if you want a more moist mozzarella, don't cut it, don't stir it, just leave it alone. And then on the flip side, if you want a drier mozzarella, cut it smaller, stir it more and for longer. The other thing to keep in mind during this time is you want to try to keep your whey at about 100 degrees. Now that the curds have shrunk and firmed up a bit, I've switched from the ladle to just using my hands to stir. You can see how much they have shrunk up, except for a few of the big ones that I've missed. So I'm still just bringing those up and cutting those big guys to size. I'm all finished stirring and I let the curds sit for about 5 minutes to collect at the bottom of the pot. And here I'm just showing you how small they are. They're about the size of a bean. Other than that one curd right there in the front, you can see it's still kind of big and shiny, but it's okay. It'll be fine. So let's move on. Now I am making an 18% salt brine. So that's 1 part salt, 5 parts water. So here I am doing 1 cup of salt and I'll add 5 cups of water and just mix it until the salt is dissolved. Okay, almost to the fun part now, getting the cheese to stretch. So I've just turned my heat on to medium and I am heating up the whey, and I'm going to continue to heat it until the cheese starts to stick together and stretch. You can see here it's starting to melt a little bit, but not
too much yet.
At this point, I'd started heating my whey and I got to 150 degrees, and it was parts of the curds were starting to melt together and wanting to stretch a little bit, but not that much. I mean, when mozzarella is in that right pH window to stretch, I mean, cow's milk will really stretch, as you'll see later in this video. So what I decided to do was to add more citric acid to increase the acidity of the mozzarella. I can't remember exactly how much I added. I'm guessing it was probably around 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon. And as soon as I added that, the cheese instantly started stretching beautiful and did exactly as it should. So see, this is the problem that I have with quick mozzarella. Like I said in the beginning of the video, you're really just guessing what your pH is. Point of this is, if you are doing quick mozzarella and you followed all the steps, you've heated your whey, and your curd is not stretching like it's supposed to, go ahead and experiment with adding a small amount more of acid and see if that does a trick. I mean, if it's already ruined, what have you got to lose? You might as well try it. It worked for me. I bet it'll work for you too.
Here's another glimpse before I added the additional citric acid. So you can see that some of it is a little melted and stretchy, but overall it's not. And then after I add this citric acid, you can see here that the texture just completely changes and it begins to stretch like crazy. So once it gets to this point of stretching, I just like to stretch mine a couple times until it's smooth and shiny and doesn't have any lumps. Make sure you're holding the ends very gently and not squeezing them, because that'll make it tough. And if it gets to where it doesn't want to stretch anymore, like about like here, it's not really stretching for me, that's just because it's cooling off and it needs to be heated back up. So just put it back in your whey to rewarm, and then you can stretch it again if needed. If not, just knead it into a ball or whatever shape you want and move on to the next step. Okay, so now I'm just kind of shaping mine into a ball, and I'm going to stick it in the press just to make it form into a nice shape for shredding. This is totally optional. You don't need to do this. You can stretch it into whatever shape you want, and then if you're happy with that, you can go ahead and stick it in cool water or into your brine. By the way, I'm just pouring some of the warm whey over the cheese just to help it kind of adhere to the shape of the mold. You totally don't have to do this. I didn't need to do this. I just felt compelled to do it on this particular day, so that's what that is.
Right now, I gotta go make supper, or there's going to be a mutiny from my tiny humans when they get hangry. So I am going to let this sit in the form for a little while. I've salted to the top. I'm gonna flip it in about 8 more minutes, and then I will salt that side, and then I'm going to stick it in my 18% brine. You can't see it, it's right here. Actually, hold it. Oh, reverse. As soon as I'm done with it in here, in about another 18 minutes, I will weigh it so I know how long to brine it, and then I will stick it in the pot.
Okay, so this actually did not end up brining for very long at all. Basically, I let it sit in there while I got my pizza dough ready, and then I pulled it out, and you can see here I'm trying to shred it, and it's not really shredding because it's not that cool yet, because it's still pretty fresh. Mozzarella shreds best when it's really cold or even partially frozen. So what we decided to do was just slice it and put it on the pizza that way, and it worked great. Moral of the story is, long fermented or a traditional mozzarella is the way to go if you have the time. However, if you're pressed for time, quick mozzarella does have its place. And the thing to keep in mind is that if you've done everything you're supposed to do and the cheese still isn't stretching, perhaps you haven't lowered that pH enough, and go ahead and try adding just a little bit more acid and see if that'll get you the stretch that you need. Thank you, friends, for watching this video. I hope maybe you learned a tip or two. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments down below, and I will see you next week.